As always, welcome to the Zoom presentation. If you have any questions that come up during the Zoom presentation, please use the Q&A button and submit your question that way. And we'll be stopping for questions along the way as they come up. And so we'll move forward from here. What we're going to do today is talk about things that really are taken care of for you automatically on county computers. They're just done for you. But we want to show you how to do a lot of these basic things to make sure your home computer is set up securely as well. Originally, we were going to talk about Windows systems, Macs, iOS, and Android. But in the interest of time, we're moving the iOS and Android to a different webinar. But we will be talking about Windows and Macs today. So we want to make sure we cover as much material as possible and not try to overdo it. So this particular Lunch and Learn, the slides are already available on SharePoint, and this video will be available later today. This is being recorded, and you will have the first access to these resources so that you can use them. So you're not having to write everything down right now. There's a full PDF of the slides, and once again, the video will be available to you as well. So because there are quite a number of steps that we're going to be walking through today, and you'll want to retrace those steps pretty easily. So let's talk about threats to home computers. And really, threats to home computers are kind of exactly the same as threats to any computers. But a lot of times home computers aren't really treated as valuable assets, and really they should, because you probably are using them for some pretty valuable things, including access to your financials and all your data and your information, and maybe even some real valuable pictures and those sorts of things. So we're going to talk about those threats. One of the things I wanted to mention is social engineering. We talk about it all the time, phishing and that sort of thing, is always a threat. But really, it's kind of a human vulnerability. The bad guy will get us to click on links, to surrender our credentials, to download the bad guy's software. Maybe that might be ransomware. These are all the results of phishing, but we're not going to focus on phishing today. Instead, what we're going to do, because phishing is really a whole topic of its own, we're in social engineering. What we're going to do instead is focus on some of the technical things that you can do to your home computer in order to eliminate some of these threats. So software vulnerabilities are a fascinating thing. Basically, what you have is your computer is built, all these applications and your operating system is built on some very complex programming. And it is very easy to make mistakes in programming or to overlook some things. And that's often what happens. It's oftentimes mistakes in software. Researchers find these mistakes, and we call them vulnerabilities. And they can be taken advantage of by a malicious person or malicious software to gain access to your computer, install backdoors, steal information, that sort of a thing. So you have a vulnerability, that vulnerability becomes known. Bad guy's going to go after that vulnerability to get remote access to your computer system, and we'll talk about some of the things that a bad guy can do with your system once they have access to it. The way these vulnerabilities are addressed is what we call patches. Basically, they're fixes to the operating system or to the software that fix that and patch that hole up. They correct the code. And that's why patching on a regular basis is so important. And we'll show you how to verify all those things today. The other threat is commonly can occur obviously through email, but also from downloading software and not verifying it. You can get spyware, you can get viruses, keyloggers that can basically see what you're typing. Remote access Trojans that gives a bad guy remote access to your computer system without you knowing it. Trojan horses are basically software that is claiming to be one thing and really is somewhere else. So there's a lot of different, those kind of threats as well. And another one is software with evil backdoors. It would be kind of like the remote access thing, but basically software that really is legitimate, but somebody put a backdoor in there for maybe legitimate purposes. Maybe they stated somewhere that, hey, if we need to service this software or help you in an assistance, this is how we get in. But if it's discovered by a bad guy, then you have a problem. So these are all vulnerabilities to home computers. And ultimately what happens is the bad guys will try to get in and steal your information. This is a really, really great graphic. It's been around since Oh gosh, it's been around for quite a number of years now, and it really hasn't changed much because it's on Brian Krebs' website. And what it is the value of a hacked PC. So, for example, if your machine gets hacked and a bad guy controls it, generally what will happen is oftentimes they'll just put your PC up for rent on the dark web. So anybody can go there and rent a bunch of machines, sometimes thousands of them, thousands of zombies, to use for a temporary period of time for their own purposes. This can be to set up phishing sites, to use for spam, real common. Maybe they'll install ransomware on the systems or one or two systems to try to make some money. They'll try to steal financial credentials. But one of the more interesting things that they'll use is they'll use all these different hacked computers to have them all simultaneously connect to a particular site of somebody that they don't like in order to create what's called a denial of service attack. So a hacked PC actually has a significant amount of value. And so it's one of the reasons why we want to make sure that our computers are properly secured, so to the best of our ability, we can know that at least from a technical perspective, we have some secured machines. So we're going to start with Microsoft updates. Microsoft updates basically are updates to Microsoft operating systems. And I'm going to show you how to verify that Microsoft updates are set up properly. Microsoft generally updates their operating system once a month. It's usually on the second Tuesday of the month. That's why we have a pattern around here of patching. Microsoft has done a good job with Windows 10 of making sure that Windows 10 updates itself automatically. But you can verify that this is the case. So what I'm going to do here, so I'm going to go ahead and turn on my laser pointer so it's easy to see. The first thing that you want to do here to verify that your updates are working properly is to go down to the Start menu, and you're going to click on this little gear here that says Settings. And when you get to that screen, this is the Windows settings screen where most Windows settings can be found. What you're interested in is this one called Update and Security. And when you click on it, it's going to give you this picture right here. And in this case, it tells me Windows is up to date and it last checked at a pretty recent time. You already checked today. That's what you would expect normally unless there's a problem. You can also click check for updates manually if you wish to as well. There's some other settings in here too that are interesting. You can actually change the active hours of when it's going to be checking for patches. But what I want you to do is click on this advanced options and go in here. And you see this line here that says receive updates for other Microsoft products when you update Windows. Make sure that that checkbox is on. The reason why is because then when your computer automatically updates itself, it will also update itself for all the non-operating system products like Office and maybe even some stuff that you bought in the Windows Store. It will get all that stuff up to date, which is really, really, really important. So you want to double check that one next time you have a chance. Now, there's a problem here, and a lot of people don't know this, but when you run Windows Update, it only updates Microsoft stuff. It doesn't update any other software that doesn't belong to Microsoft. So if you're running third-party software, and most of us do, in some way, shape, or another, you have a lot of different software on your computer system that needs to have attention paid to it, possibly, in order to have it be updated. We'll talk about browsers a little bit more in a second, but a lot of you run Adobe Acrobat Reader, of course, and maybe Apple iTunes, and if you're really unfortunate, you have to run Oracle Java. So the best way, rather than talk through all the different ways that software updates, we decided that we'd give you a little cool little tool here that's free. It's called Sumo, and this is the URL for it. And again, these are in the slides. And this particular software is really cool for checking the status of third-party applications. So what we're going to do here, let's see here. I'm going to do this. Okay. So once you go to this particular website, and you'll see Sumo here, and you're just going to go ahead and click download, and it will download it. Now, the worst thing we can do right now is to go ahead and just install this software. And the reason why is because even though we've downloaded and we've checked it out, if you're downloading this software, you want to make sure that it's still a legitimate piece of software, because who knows? Their site could have been compromised. The reason why I'm showing you this is because anytime you download anything from the internet that you're going to install, it's a really good idea to do what we're about to do. And it's very simple, very fast, and very easy. And we're going to go to our good friend VirusTotal.com. VirusTotal will inspect files and website URLs. So we're going to choose the file. We're going to go up here to Sumo Lite, the one we just downloaded, and we're going to click Open. And it will basically check the hash or upload the file, and then tell you what the results are of 68 different antivirus engines on that particular file. Sumolite.exe, there's its hash. 0 engines detected that there's a problem. 1 set unknown verdict. You don't really have to worry about that. But in this particular case, it looks like a real clean file from the perspective of all these antivirus engines. Even the community score is in the positive side. I think it's 7 in this case, yeah. And if you see something in the community comments, you know that you can read those things too. So the reason why you're seeing this as a video recording, the reason why I did this as a recording and I'm talking on top of it is because there's some processes that take a little while in this video, and I sped them up in the interest of time for today. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go up to downloads, and we're going to double click Sumo Lite, and Windows is going to say, hey, you want this thing to install, you want to give it the privileges to, and you just go ahead and say yes. You're going to accept the agreement, choose next, and then you can just click through the rest of them and go. Once you click install, it will install the software, and then it will open up a web page basically automatically that just says, hey, thank you for installing our software. So you can close that. Now I'm going to uncheck this box, launch Sumo, and I'm going to click finish because I want to launch this a little differently using this shortcut on the desktop that it put there for me. So I'm going to take this shortcut and I'm going to right click it, and I'm going to run as administrator. Okay, it gives the software the ability to see all of the products that you have on the computer system. So that's, it will also complain and give you that option if you just double click it as well. So we're going to run as administrator, say yes, and click automatically detect installed software. And so it'll do that, and it'll go through and it'll find every little piece of third-party software existing on your machine. This is sped up significantly in the interest of time. This usually takes a few minutes and provides you with this really cool list of everything that you have installed on your computer system. Now this is a free product. They have a paid version as well, but you do not need it, and I'll tell you more about that in just a second. Then we're going to go up here and click check, and when we do that, it's going to check each piece of software and tell us if we are okay or if an update is available. And at the end of its process of moving through, there's quite a bit of software on this machine, most of it's from sysinternals, you will see a list up here of software that is not up to date. Very handy, because then you don't have to go through and worry about this, check every single piece. This will find it for you. Couple different ways you can update them from this tool if you want is on these ones that have the exclamation point, like VIM. You can just double click it, and it will take you to a website that is hosted by KC Softwares and give you the option to download the update with Sumo Pro. You don't need that. This is something they provide with the professional version, but you really don't need that. In this particular case, VIM, they have a link here to VIM's website, or you can just Google it too. But you click on that and it actually takes you to therealvim.org, where you can download the latest release of the software. So very, very handy there. The other thing is if you have something like KeepNote, which has a different thing, and you click Get Update, in this particular case, they do hold some back where you can't get the link on their page like this one. And the way around that is basically we'll just type in KeepNote. We'll use Google to find the actual place, and we'll go download the update from there. So very, very, very handy piece of software. Recommend you checking it out. Okay, let's talk about browsers. Browsers update themselves, okay? Modern browsers do. But the reason why it's important for you to check your browser every once in a while is this. If you're using your browser every day, pretty much it's going to update itself as it goes, And what you want to do is you want to restart that browser at least in the morning. So in other words, close it at the end of the day, reopen it the next day, and it will pretty much keep itself up to date. If you haven't used a browser in a little while, though, and it doesn't have all of its updates, what's going to happen is you're going to launch the browser, and then the browser is going to start updating itself. But the updates don't apply until you restart the browser the next time. So that whole first browsing session that you have while it's updating itself, you're browsing with a vulnerable browser. And so what I do basically is when I know there's a patch out, I will double check it. But if I haven't used a browser in a while, I will go ahead and double check it. So here we are in Chrome. The way we double check Chrome is pretty straightforward. Go up here to the little 3-dot thing, go down to Help, About Google Chrome. Google Chrome will then try to update itself and tell you whether it's up to date, or it will download and then ask you to restart it. Pretty straightforward. Edge is basically Google Chrome. It's a Chromium-based browser. So you can go to Help and Feedback, About Microsoft Edge, and it will do pretty much the exact same thing. It's based upon Chromium open source projects. It's much better than Internet Explorer, which is defunct these days. And then finally, Firefox, if you just go to Help, About Firefox, and it will check for updates and tell you whether Firefox is up to date. So real handy stuff. By the way, Internet Explorer is the only leftover browser, if you're still having to use it for some reason, that actually gets updated with Windows Update. So everything else after that is done on its own. Okay, so the other thing you want to do is avoid these browser toolbars. They're generally full of spyware and all kinds of garbage. We recommend against them if at all possible. Let's talk about Microsoft Defender, because everybody wonders about antivirus. And Microsoft Defender kind of took over the scene in the Windows space a few years ago. It was called Windows Defender, and then they've changed everything to use the Microsoft name. And Microsoft Defender is actually a pretty good product. It's done well in our testing. It is built in and it is free. Does that mean if you run another antivirus product that's a problem? No, not really. Sometimes having a second opinion is really, really important, and there's a lot of additional tools in some of those paid pieces that you may want to take advantage of. But for the most part, for fundamental antivirus, Microsoft Defender does a really good job. And so what I want to do here in this next video is show you how you can use it to do a couple of interesting things on Windows 10. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to go down to the little shield down here at the bottom of the thing. It says Windows Security, and we're going to click on that. And that shield is going to bring up the Windows Security thing. We're going to click on Virus and Threat Protection. This particular page will tell you if there's any current threat, when the last scan was done, because there's automated scans that happen on your computer, how long it lasted, and how many files were scanned. You can actually run a quick scan from here. But what I want you to do is go down here. Actually, the video is going. Okay, here's what we're going to do next. I forgot that we did this first. Say you have a file that you want to do a virus scan on. In this case, we'll pick this Sumo Lite that we just downloaded. All you have to do is right-click the file and go Scan with Microsoft Defender. Once you do that, it'll take you here. It will tell you there's the last scan. It scanned one file. It did not find any threats. Very useful. You can do a number of different options with a scan if you'd like. What you want to do is go to Scan Options, and you can tell it to run a quick scan where threats are commonly found, a full scan of everything, a custom scan. But this is the one I wanted to show you. It's called the Microsoft Defender Offline Scan. And I do recommend that you do this occasionally. What this does is it actually restarts your device and will scan without the operating system running in full capability, which gives it a deeper look into your operating system. So you choose Microsoft Defender Offline Scan, you choose Scan Now, and what it's going to do is it's going to tell you to save your work. You can say Scan. It'll ask you, do you want to allow Windows Security to do its thing? It'll tell you you're about to be signed out. And then from that point on, it will restart your computer system, reboot your system, and then basically go into a automated scan mode that will run for a little while. So you can't do any work while this is happening, but it's good to do this every once in a while because it'll really do a deep scan that it's unable to do while the full operating system is running. So very, very, very cool tool. All right, let's talk about the Windows firewall real quickly here. That's another thing we want to verify. The firewall basically protects the services that are running on your computer from external attack, and they also provide some defense against, people doing things that they shouldn't be doing. In this case of the Windows firewall, the way we're going to check for the Windows firewall is we're going to go back to that settings place that or you can click start, I'm sorry, and click the word and type the word firewall in the search bar. And that will bring up firewall and network protection, of which case you click on that. And firewall and network protection will give you this. And really, it's just a quick check. You want to make sure that the firewall is on for all three of these locations here, especially this one, because what will happen is if you're on a private network, it'll trust things a little bit better than it will on a public network. But you want to make sure your public network firewall is on, because that's pretty well locked down. You can always restore your firewalls to default using this link down here, and applications will generally prompt if they need to get through your firewall when things are installed. So pretty useful there. So that's how you check the status of the Windows firewall. Another thing I want to definitely recommend, and we talked about VirusTotal, is to be really careful about the programs you download. I know that one of the things that Apple has done with iOS is make it so that every app goes through them and gets checked. It's not 100% perfect, but it does a very, very, very good job. And so everything's only available on the App Store. Android recommends people use Google Play, but we're not talking about Android and iOS today. We're really focusing on Windows and of course Macs in just a second here. So what we do recommend is that you make sure that the software that you download is legitimate. You use tools like VirusTotal to double check them, and make sure you're not pirating software, because generally that's the place where a lot of really, really bad stuff hangs out. Finally, I want to mention about backups, and this is really critical because ransomware happens. Bad things happen to computer systems, and really sooner or later something's going to happen to our computer system, potentially even if it's just a hard drive dying or something like that. And having our data backed up is so important, because then it makes it easy if for example, we get infected and the best thing is to have our operating system reinstalled, to reset things. We want to make sure our data is backed up. So there's lots of cloud backup options, that sort of a thing available today. That's really highly recommended because it makes it available everywhere and you don't have to use hardware. However, if you do have a disk drive, that'll work as well. But it's very important that after you do run your backups, that you unplug that disk drive, so that in case you are affected by something like ransomware, that these files aren't also affected as well. So really important, have good backups, make sure you're good to go in case of an emergency. All right, let's go into the world of Macs. Macs are a lot of fun. By the way, if you're not familiar with this Mac here, this is the Macintosh SE30. It's of the original line of Macs from the 90s. Actually from the 80s and 90s. This particular Mac here is funny. I worked at Cabrillo College back in the 90s, and I actually ran a lab of a bunch of these little things. And it was fun little hardware to deal with. The operating system on those old Macs was horrific. I mean, everybody liked the GUI, but the engine behind it was just bad. And so basically what they've done with this operating system here, which is OS 10, which is available on more modern Macs, they rebuilt their operating system from the ground up. It's a whole different engine underneath, and it was built with security as a priority from the beginning, which is something that didn't happen in the Windows environment. So the newer Macs operating systems are much better and much more stable than the old thing. But there are a number of recommendations, and I'm actually going to walk through them here real quick and show you how to check those things on Macs to make sure that they're configured the way they really should be. Generally, these configuration options are available to you from the Apple menu up here under System Preferences. Should we pause for any questions right now? Or
Yeah, we've actually just had one person asking if it's going to be about Macs from here on out.
Yeah, we're going to focus on Macs now.
All right, thank you.
So, here we go. You go up to the Apple and choose System Preferences. And it brings up basically just about everything that you can configure on Apple OS, which is called OS 10. So the first thing we want to do is we want to make sure that our firewall is turned on. And you do that under the security and privacy icon. And then you select this button here that says firewall. And you want to make sure it's turned on. Really, really important. There are times that you would want certain things to be available if you're remotely controlling your Mac. And to do that, you can go here and unlock this and then go into firewall options to allow, say, for example, the ability to remotely access your Mac. But if you're not doing that sort of thing, and most people really don't, we recommend that you just have this thing turned on by default without any sharing. So actually, I'll just go ahead and show you here. So under firewall options, it will give you the ability, this says block all incoming connections, or I can uncheck that and add things that I want to allow incoming connections. In this case, I don't need either of those things to do that, and I haven't set that up in a while, but you can also add an application from here and allow remote access to that application. But we don't recommend doing that unless you absolutely need to. Leave that set to block. Really, really, really important. Next thing you want to do is, that includes disabling remote access, which you would have to do in your firewall. The next thing you want to do is make sure you're backing up your Mac. And the nice thing about the Mac is it includes this really, really, really cool thing called Time Machine. And Time Machine is nice because you can take a disk or even a disk over wireless. In this case, it's an airport time capsule. You can see I don't use this anymore for backups, but you can select that, and then it can either automatically back up or you can back it up manually, and it'll keep these local snapshots, and really, really nice for restoring something from a previous period of time. It's a good little tool, and it's been around for some time, so it's matured as well. The next thing you want to do is you want to make sure that your hard drive is encrypted, and that happens under security and privacy here. And you're going to go to File Vault and make sure that File Vault is turned on. And what will happen is that when you reboot your Mac, it'll actually prompt you right away for your credentials, because it needs those credentials in order to unencrypt the drive in order for you to be able to use it. So that way, if your Mac does get lost or stolen, they can't take the disk out and get access to it. The other thing you want to do, actually, while we're in security and privacy here, is you want to go to this general button here. Obviously, you want to make sure a login password has been set for yourself. You don't want to automatically log in because that can be risky. And you also want to require a password immediately after sleep or the screensaver begins, because that basically locks down your Mac so that people can't get into it. Also, there's this allow your Apple Watch to unlock your map. That's actually kind of cool. There is a couple of ways around that, though, because if you're in the same room as your Mac but you're not paying attention to it, somebody could try to get in and they'd actually be able to get in. It'll vibrate your phone, or vibrate your watch, but sometimes you might not know about it. So definitely disabling that automatic log on, setting up a password protected screensaver. That's really important. You can do that under desktop and screensaver here. You can set that to whatever you want a day. It'll start for me after 20 minutes. So you want to make sure that that's set up. It's basically locking your screen for you when you walk away from it or when you're not using it. Another thing you want to do is you want to disable the Spotlight suggestions. And this is really more of a privacy thing, but under Spotlight here, Spotlight will help you find things on your computer, but it says allow Spotlight suggestions and lookup. That really basically sends everything you search up to Apple, and for privacy purposes, a lot of people turn that off. Finally, and really most importantly, you want to make sure that automatic updates are enabled, and you do that here under Software Update. Now, you will notice that I do not have this checked, and my excuse, shall we say, is that in my job, I'm always keeping up to date on when patches are released for a lot of different things. So I always know when Mac OS updates are available, and if I don't know them right away, Bob Vanderslice will usually let me know. So rather than automatically here, because I have a metered satellite connection at home, I don't automatically do this because it would use up a lot of bandwidth that I pay for. So I leave this unchecked. But generally, most of you will want to make sure that this is checked so that your Mac is kept up to date. The nice thing about Mac OS is that when they do release the software, it's available right away, just like in Windows. And they do give you a little notice up here that says that there's some software that needs to be updated on your computer system. What I'm going to do at this moment, since this was the part of the Mac presentation that I wanted to go on, is I'm going to open it up to Bob Vanderslice, who is also an avid Mac user, if he has any other suggestions with regards to Mac OS. Oh, let me share one more thing, Bob, and then I'll let you take it from there. Is up here, if you notice, I actually have Malwarebytes running. It's a second antivirus application. Is it absolutely needed? No, there's a built-in antivirus in Mac OS, and it's relatively solid as well. I just, in the nature of my work, I like a little extra protection, and Malwarebytes is very inexpensive, and it does a really, really, really good job. So adding a third-party antivirus is definitely not absolutely necessary, but if you can do it, it's a good choice. So, Bob, do you have any suggestions?
Okay, well, since we were just on updates, that update only does the OS. With Mac OS 10 starting with Catalina, the update for applications now is in a different location. So if you go click on the little apple, okay, you're going to see App Store.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then on the left, you're going to see updates. This is going to show you any updates of any applications you've downloaded from the App Store onto your Mac. And it, by default, will be checked, and you can uncheck it if you had any apps to automatically update things as they come out. But usually it's about a week behind. So if you go there, you can say, okay, this is what applications I've installed from the App Store. There's updates available. You can update them then, or you can wait till the week passes and it'll auto update. But it also will end up showing you a list of what apps you have and when was the last time they were updated. So that's one thing. Another thing, if you go back to security and you go to the security and privacy tab, and then you do the unlock down, hit your padlock there. And what we're going to do is we're actually going to be on the general tab. So go back to general. Yeah, and then go to advanced down the bottom right corner. Okay. The second one, required administrator password to access system-wide preferences, is always a nice thing to have, because if you ever get a piece of malware that tries to trick you into thinking that I want to install, this is very much like what you see in Windows in the UAC screen that says, are you sure you really want to do this? By having this checked, it's going to prompt you for your password every time a piece of software is going to make a system level change. So this is just one more level in there, especially if you download software not from Apple, you download it from a third party, or it's given to you from a third party. And then you'll just get the prompt that you've been seeing when Dan clicks on the little padlock every time it tries to do anything on system settings. So as far as configuring a Mac out of the box, you hit all the big points, having the firewall turned on. Periodically, what I do is, if you go back to security and privacy, and then go to the privacy tab on the right, and then if you unlock it, because you really can't look at anything, you can look at it, but periodically I go through this and I see what apps, because I may have forgotten over time, did I give permission to look up my location, look at my contacts, my calendars, my reminders, etc., all of the apps that are listed on the left. And then you can uncheck or check them the way whatever you want. So maybe, you installed a piece of software that wants to use your camera, and you go ahead and you could say, well, I don't want to be able to use my camera anymore. And so you can go down to camera and you can see all of the apps that have been asked to use your camera, for example. And do you want all those things to use your camera? And you can say, oh, I even forgot I had this application installed. I don't need it, like WebEx. I don't like to use WebEx, but we have vendors that do, so we're kind of forced to use it at
kind
times.
of stuck there.
Same with all of these other options. And so periodically I'll just do this just to see what has requested. This is also a function that's available in iOS too, but it's also now available, has been available in the Mac since Catalina. So it's kind of a nice little check on what you have. And the same goes for the firewall too, because there are some applications you do have to allow some holes in the firewall for. And they'll show up under firewall options. Usually when you install software in a very similar fashion to Windows, it's going to ask you. And everything that you have is going to appear in this list. Okay. So other than that, you've covered it on an additional antivirus on my kids' Macs at home, because I guess in an arrogant way, I kind of trust myself not to go into any bad sites, but kids being kids, I found a really good free antivirus is Sophos, S-O-P-H-O-S. They offer a free Mac for personal use software that you can use in all the Macs in your home. And it has a single dashboard so that if you have 5 Macs at home or MacBook or a combination thereof, you can look at everybody who you've set up in your home's Macs from this dashboard and find out, did it block anything? And it can also do rudimentary parental controls too on the individual Macs. It doesn't do it like outside of the Mac. It's because you've installed Sophos on that Mac. It can block, certain categories of websites. So that's the one I use, only because I have a family with multiple Macs. If it was just me, I wouldn't use Sophos, but I don't use anything except what's built in. But with a family, I found that to be nice, especially because it has a dashboard where I can look at all of my Macs and kind of see where the kids are all going and what they have been blocked from doing. So, but other than that, you've covered it on the basic Macs on what to look out for. And as has been said many times in these presentations, you have to be cautious of where you go and what you click. And there's sometimes, just on a side note, if you go back to security settings, there's going to be some software that you install on a Mac. And one of them that you might be using in the county, for example, is the Global Protect client. And if you go to the General tab, notice at the bottom, there's an option of which apps will actually can be installed. Typically, you don't want to just do App Store because a lot of apps in the App Store are very expensive compared to their downloading directly from the vendor. And also, there are a lot of apps that aren't in the App Store because vendors don't want to pay Apple the 30% cut. So you have App Store and identify developers, but there are some software that they don't have a developer certificate from Apple for whatever reason, and it will not install. And during the installer process, it'll actually tell you this in a very cryptic message. And if you click on it, the message to say, I still want to install the software, it will take you to this page, and there will be a line that appears below where Dan's cursor is saying, hey, this software wants to modify some system stuff. Do you want to allow it? And for that one-time use, you can allow it. But initially, when we had our Global Protect client, that was that way. When you installed the Global Protect client from the web interface, it didn't have a developer certificate. And so it acted like it installed, but you got into this loop where it would constantly ask you for credentials and you just couldn't enter them. It's because you never went there and gave it permission to actually modify the system. So
thank you, Bob.
That's all I have.
Awesome.
You're welcome.
Really, really appreciate it. That's Bob Vanderslice. Okay, so last thing here is I want to mention about what you do if something's wrong with your home computer. If you're using your home computer, and some of you are required to use your home computer for work purposes, other of you have a work computer at home, but if you are required to use your computer for help purposes, you can call the service desk, or if you have a security issue, contact us. We will do our best. We'll give it best effort to help you out. One thing we can't do is actually log into your computer like we would do here in the county or make changes to it. there's liability limitations, obviously, but we will do our best to help if it is for that purpose. If you do need some more serious help, or you need an operating system reinstall or something like that, and you don't know how to do it yourself, we do recommend the Geek Squad at Best Buy. They do a pretty good job of that sort of thing as well. So there is help available out there. Like I said, if you're using your home computer for work-related stuff, we'll do our best. It's not that we don't like you, though. If we have to stop at some point, there's only so far we can go. And that's the end of the presentation. So, Brian, I will check with you to see if there are any questions.
Not at the moment.
We will wrap things up. So really appreciate everybody being here. Thank you so much for attending, and we will talk to you all soon.